Good morning. This week we are going to shift just a little bit, and I'm going to move away from what falls under the category of personal eschatology to think a little bit more about more corporate eschatology. Eschaton is a Greek word for the last things, right, the end. And in this series, Afterlife, we've been focusing on, what happens when we die, death, judgment, right? All those sort of personal things. And didn't have any intention on talking about, the things that many people think of when they think of eschatology or the apocalypse and, the end of the world and all this stuff. And so I just want to say that, look, I read my email and I'm getting questions about, are we living in the last days? What about the Antichrist? What about the mark of the beast? What's this? What's that? And I'm like, oh, okay, that is not where I had intended for this to go, but I do need to sort of respond to some of these. So this week, we're going to take a few of these questions. So for the record, these kinds of discussions are not a big part of Christ's teaching. We do hear from Jesus after his death, resurrection, and ascension, as he pulls John, the apostle, forward. John, who writes the Gospel of John and 1 John, also writes the book of Revelation. So it's the revelation of Jesus to John. John gets called up and sees things in heaven. And so you get some of Jesus' teaching about, looking ahead and foreshadowing and all that kind of stuff. But for the most part, Jesus teaches about himself, like he is his favorite topic. He is claiming that he is God, that he is the Messiah, right? That he's the one that people have been looking for. And then he talks about the coming kingdom. He talks about what is expected of us. He reveals God. We just don't get a lot of the kind of apocalyptic stuff that people are expecting. But as I said, I've read my email. So the big question that I'm going to take on, the first question I'm going to take on is, are we living in the last days? Now, let me just step back and note that two things. One, there is a sense in which people have always thought they were living in the last days. For the last 2,000 years. From the apostles on, people have thought, more at sometimes than others, but people have often thought, this is the end, right? Everything that has to happen has happened. This is the end. We're living in the last days. And the first church that I went to serve as a college pastor, the person who chaired the committee that I reported to was an older gentleman. And at the time, he was even older than I am now. But he had not gone to college. Interesting guy, very, very faithful guy, very important guy, and he and his wife, for Sherry and I. But he had not gone to college because as a high school student, he had been told that there was not time. Jesus was going to return. He should not waste time in college. So here he was, 50 years later, which was 40 years ago, and Jesus had obviously not returned. So there's always a sense in which that's been the case, and sometimes more than others. And then there's also this understanding that biblical language refers to these as, the last days. And there's this language about the present age and the age to come, and Paul will use some of this language. It comes out of sort of Jewish apocalyptic thinking, and there's a sense in Jewish literature about the present age being an evil age, but then the Messiah is going to come, and that will be then move into the final age. And when Jesus shows up, he will say at various times, right, John the Baptist will announce the kingdom of God is at hand, right? And Jesus will talk on the one hand about this being the present evil age, and he is here now. We should expect to suffer it at this time in this present evil age. But then he will also talk about the fact that the kingdom of God is at hand. It's unfolding. And so if you're going to read a more thoughtful, seminary level, scholarly understanding of eschatology, you're going to hear about things about the kingdom of God is at hand. It's now, but it's not yet. It's arriving, but it's not fully here. Obviously, there's a sense in which it's breaking out. Jesus is resurrected from the dead, the first fruits of the resurrection, and all those promises have started to unfold. But they're not here. Jesus has not returned. The one who came as a baby has not returned as a king and a conquering king. And so there's always a sense in which we're living in the last days. Some think of that one way, others, the New Testament refers to it another. But I am aware that's not what you're asking. And some of you are rolling your eyes and going, oh, good night, Woodruff, you're going to do this again. So you want to know, like, is the present challenges in the Middle East, is this a sign that Jesus is going to return this afternoon? Or, with AI, is this now just a sign of the end times, or it's the Antichrist, or whatever is going to happen? So, look, I'm gonna stay in my lane as a pastor, and so I'm gonna say, first of all, I don't know. I don't have any special insight here. I would encourage you not to read the Bible, in particular, the book of Revelation or the book of Daniel, like as some sort of, apocalyptic puzzle to be solved, right? That's like the book of Revelation couldn't be understood by anybody for the last 2,000 years until today, and now we get the clues and we can figure this out. I just don't believe that. I don't believe that that's why these books were written or how we are to understand them. And I also want to note that oftentimes when people want to know what's about to happen, they want to know because they want to know when they ought to make changes to their life and get ready. And that's not at all the way this is supposed to unfold. So I want to say, I am confident that Jesus will return, that he will return in power and glory, and that history is not aimless or cyclical. It's marching towards this culmination, and it will include Christ's reclaiming and restoring all things, and a new heaven and a new earth, and the coronation of Jesus as king. And I mean, we're moving in that direction. I believe that, and I believe that those who claim to know that it's going to happen in whatever in 18 days or in 6 years or whatever, that they don't know. I mean, we've got passages where Jesus says, nobody knows. The Son of Man, he's talking about himself, doesn't know the day or the hour. So look, when people say Christ is going to return on this date, I just want to say, just back away, right? I don't. Now, at some point, one of these clowns might be right. So I'm not saying Jesus isn't going to return. I'm just going to say that I have not been impressed with the kind of thinking that has led people to make these predictions. And I also want to say that, look, we just don't need to worry about this. It is much more likely that I will face the end of my life through my physical death than some other way. When you look at all of history for the last 2,000 years, all people, right? People are meeting God because they die physically. And we don't know when that's going to happen. And I have not a close friend, but a friend who died 2 days ago, younger than I am, very unexpectedly. Like, our life could end at any point. So I just want to say, look, the goal isn't to figure this out so we can get our act together at the end. We should be asking, how do I live faithfully today in light of the fact that I'm not promised tomorrow? And there's a lot of speculation here that I just don't think is very helpful. So, sorry to disappoint many of you, but are we living at the end of the age? I don't know. I do geopolitically read people, and this is a fragile political moment, geopolitical moment, for sure. So that's not to be dismissed. But focus on God and loving God and serving others. Have a good day.